Hey there, my friends. Welcome to the Links to Messiah podcast, where we are passionate about teaching our children all about the connections between the Old and New Testament. I'm your host, Rachel Links Kushner, also known as the Chief Enthusiasm Officer of Links to Messiah. And I am so thrilled to have you join us today. Come along and discover how your family and children can grow in their faith as you discover the beautiful links that God reveals throughout Scripture about the history of His people and His Son Jesus, our Messiah. Well, I am here today with my new friend, Liat, from Light to the Nations Ministries. Hello.
Hi. Thanks for having me on the podcast.
Thank you. I'm so happy to meet you and get to know you. We don't know each other, so this is going to be fun.
Yes.
So I've learned a little bit about you from Instagram and from your website. And I understand what I read was that you were raised in a Messianic home in Israel.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, so I was also raised in a Messianic home. Now, not in Israel, in Philadelphia. So tell me like a little bit of your family history and how your parents came to know the Lord and all that good stuff.
Yeah. Well, my mom was born in an Orthodox Jewish home, religious Jewish home. And, she thought like Jews for Jesus, like what are they going to think of next? Like that's the funniest thing ever. And it wasn't until she was down her journey and had people reaching out to her and she came to faith in Yeshua. So she accepted Yeshua as her Messiah. Yeah, so that's a whole story in and of itself.
Oh, I'm sure we could do a whole podcast just on that.
Yeah, exactly. And then she started reading her Bible kind of for the first time and understood that actually Israel is our home as Jewish people. So she made the crazy decision to make Aliyah, to move to Israel. And then my brother and I were born there. So we were raised, in a Messianic Jewish home in Israel.
Okay, so she's American?
She is Canadian.
Oh, Canadian. Okay, yes. Your husband is from Canada, correct?
Yes. So we met in Canada, my husband and I, and then we moved to Israel, back to Israel together.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, so your mother was born into an Orthodox Jewish home.
Yeah.
Got saved, started reading her Bible.
Yes.
Says, hey, I'm going to move to Israel. I'm going to, as you said, make Aliyah. Some people don't know what that means, but making Aliyah means returning to our homeland, right?
Exactly.
And so you and your brother were born in Israel and then raised in this Messianic Jewish home in Israel. That is so, so cool.
Yeah, totally. And it was really a blessing because for my mom, when she came to faith, she had this identity crisis. Like, do I wear a cross now? Or do I wear a Magen David? Am I Jewish? Am I Christian? So she kind of pioneered a lot of that stuff for us and then was able to, teach us. And so now the heart behind our ministry that my husband and I run is to bring this message to the younger generation because we've noticed that they're not being reached as much as we would like. So that's kind of what we're doing now together.
Yeah, so I did want to dig into that a little deeper and learn more about, tell me like practically boots on the ground, like what kinds of things are you doing?
Well, right now we're doing a lot of media outreach. So we do have a website and we have Bible studies and study guides, blog posts, videos, sharing about the Jewish roots of our faith. So Jesus is Jewish. What does that mean for us? Is the Torah still a relevant conversation? Different things like that. And then also in Israel, we were running a children's program and a youth program. So we're just passionate about helping youth and young adults connect to this message.
Yeah, I love that. So are you running like Bible studies for younger people?
Yeah, I would say all the content we put out is pretty relevant for everyone, but especially geared towards youth and young adults because it's easier to listen to watch. And then we also have a book coming out soon called Why Care About Israel? And it seeks to answer that question. Why should we as believers care or think about Israel? But it's really packaged in a way that young people can easily read with stories, personal application, and photos. So not tiny text and 300 pages long, but still an important message. Yeah.
Yeah. So trying to hit the young adult group, it sounds like, right?
Yeah.
And doing it in such a way where it's not heavy reading material.
Exactly.
Because in today's digital world, we just want everything fed to us very quickly.
Yes.
And so you're gearing things more towards visual learners and audio learners, it sounds like.
Yeah, exactly.
That's neat. So tell us, okay, so you and your husband met in Canada.
Yes.
Okay, so you're in Israel. You came back to Canada. Why did you come back to Canada?
Yeah, well, we were actually visiting Canada at the time. So the first time we met at a Sukkot event, actually.
Really?
Yeah, we were visiting Canada, and Yanai's not Jewish. He had never been to Israel, but God put this supernatural desire in his heart to start learning Hebrew.
No kidding.
Yeah. So, and he just always loved the idea of Israel. So when he was 15, he started learning Hebrew. So the first words he spoke to me, I was standing in the food line at the Sukkot event, Feast of Tabernacles, and he said, "Ma tochelet," which is, "What are you eating?" So he was trying to talk to me. So yeah, and then we clicked, but then it took a while for us to reconnect again years later, and then we got married. So.
Oh, that is so neat. So there was a Sukkot celebration, and you guys are standing. And he's 15 and has a desire to learn Hebrew. That is very unusual. That is cool.
Yeah, totally. So he taught himself on Duolingo how to learn Hebrew. So when we moved to Israel together, he'd never been to Israel before he moved there. And he could already have conversations with people. So that was
him.
Yeah. And I think it's amazing too to see his heart in that, because I think for us, I'm Jewish. He's not Jewish by blood, but in the spirit, we're one and we have the same heart. And so I can see, I would love to see more of that in the body of Messiah as a whole, as brothers and sisters.
Tell me the name of your ministry. It just
Light
went
to the Nations. Yeah.
Light to the Nations. It went right out of my brain. I'm so embarrassed. Okay.
No problem.
Light to the Nations. So is part of your ministry also sort of bridging that gap?
Yeah.
If you will.
Definitely.
Yeah. Can you explain a little bit more about that for our audience?
Yeah. Well, I think that, if we think of Judaism over here, they hold the Torah, they are celebrating the appointed times, they read the Bible, just, excluding the New Testament, and they believe the Messiah is going to come back. They just believe he's coming back for the first time, and they don't know who it is, right? And then you look at Christianity over here, and, most churches are really filled with the Spirit, and they believe Yeshua is the Messiah, but they're really lacking an understanding of his identity of who is this Jesus that we serve? And he was born in Israel, he was Jewish, but it's kind of, there's been this divorce between Israel and the church, and understanding the significance of the Torah, the appointed times, and Yeshua's true identity.
Yes.
And especially now with the war happening in Israel, we were there on October 7th. We woke up to the sound of missiles. And, now we're here in Canada. We've been sharing about what's happening in Israel. But we see that a lot of Christians see it as maybe just another conflict happening. But they don't realize the significance of how much God has to say about this country and this nation, Israel. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So that's very helpful. So I do want to talk to you about being in Israel when the war broke out, because I have some friends in Israel, and it's fascinating and terrifying to listen to experiencing waking up to that horrific tragedy on October 7th. I can't believe I cannot believe we still have hostages. Anyway, that's just we could go into a whole thing about all of that, because it's horrible. It's awful. So part of your ministry is also really explaining to Gentiles that the Old and the New Testament are one book.
Totally.
It's one big redemption story, not two separate things. Okay, so, we're very similar kind of in mission, if you will, because my mission is, linking, if you will, links Messiah, right? Linking the Old and the New Testament at a child's level for a child to be able to understand why that matters. Why is that important? Why is celebrating Sukkot important? What is Sukkot? A lot of people don't even know the word, right? And there's just a lot of vocabulary to explain and traditions and all the amazing, beautiful things that have been set up and laid before us.
Yeah.
I know you're in Canada currently as we're recording this, but you live in Israel.
Yeah, we live in Israel.
Mm-hmm.
We've lived there for 2 years together.
Okay.
And right now we're in Canada for a season. We're not sure exactly how long that will be, but our home is definitely Israel. It always will be. Yeah.
Yeah. I did a virtual coloring party today with a bunch of kids. It was so much fun. And we had 2 families from Israel. And after the coloring party, one of the moms sent me a private message, and her son, who is like, actually, I don't know, maybe 7, 8.
Yeah.
I don't know. He's very young. He wanted to know, what were those kids feeling living in Israel? He's obviously aware that there is a war. So tell us from an adult perspective, what is it like? What were you feeling on that day? Tell us on October 7th when you woke up. What did you experience?
Yeah. Well, the night before we were celebrating at my sister's house because it was, the end of wrapping up the Sukkot season.
Yeah.
So we got home and it was just a total shock. And Yanai heard the sound of the sirens before me. So he turns to me and goes, "Are those sirens? Do you hear sirens?" And I'm like so tired. We got home so late. So I'm still half asleep. But then we started hearing the sound of booms in the distance. So we're awake and we're alert. And I had been through rocket fire before, but this was very much with no warning, right outside our window. So we walk to the living room and we look outside our living room window and we can see the missiles in the sky. Yes, and we saw the Iron Dome interceptions.
You did.
And the house was shaking from the impact. And then later on, we found out one missile did land on the edge of our town, but thankfully no one was injured. So that was kind of what we woke up to. But when we started hearing the stories of what happened in southern Israel, I mean, I think that is what really hit everyone's heart of just how could this happen? And of course, it was just a huge tragedy. And then now we're just seeing, the anti-Semitism around the world or the lack of awareness. Some people still don't even know how this war started. They just think it's another, Israel-Gaza conflict. Why can't they just get along? So that's also part of our ministry is to advocate for Israel and share, what's really going on in the midst of, so much biased media. So.
Shalom, shalom, my friends. If you are looking for a way to deepen your family's connection to the Sabbath while uncovering the rich tapestry of the Messianic prophecy, I have something for you. Introducing Shabbat Boxes, brought to you by Links to Messiah. As many of you know, Shabbat is Hebrew for Sabbath. We are commanded to keep the Sabbath holy. This beautifully curated box is filled with everything that you will need to create a meaningful Shabbat experience right in your own home. Every box includes a set of candles and wooden candlestick holders so that your kids can decorate and design their own candlestick holders. Additionally, each child will be able to make their very own challah cover. What is challah? Are you wondering that? Challah is a delicious bread. It's slightly sweet and it's enriched with eggs. It's braided before baking. I'm salivating thinking about it. It's a Shabbat tradition. Games and various arts and crafts activities are also included. But that's not all. You can dive into the thought-provoking study materials to explore the links between Shabbat traditions and the Messianic promise. It is perfect for families who are eager to honor the Sabbath while uncovering the profound significance of Jesus. You can go to linkstomessiah.com to purchase your Shabbat box. We're also going to have it listed in the show notes so you can just click right on there. And now back to our conversation. So tell me, where in Israel, I mean, I'm not looking for your address, but where in Israel do you live?
Yeah, we live near Jerusalem. Yeah, in central Israel.
You're in central Israel. Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So so give us perspective, because Israel is such a small country.
Yes.
Right?
Totally.
So Jerusalem is how far from the most northern part of the Gaza Strip?
Yeah. I don't know exactly how far, but Israel is tiny. I think sometimes during our presentations, I'll show a map of the Middle East and the whole region, and then Israel's like a tiny little dot.
It is amazing how small it is.
Yes, and I'll highlight, these are all the Muslim countries in green, and then little Israel in red, and they're like, where is it? It's so small.
It's so I think, tiny.
Yeah, and then you zoom in a little more, and then you see all of Gaza, right, which is governed by Hamas, and then also all the West Bank, which is majority Arab populated. And then, of course, within Israel, there's Jews and Arabs, and we all live together.
That's right.
Yeah, not everyone knows that. Mm-hmm.
Yes, that is true. So I have a friend who served the Arabs for years in Israel, and she said it's amazing how they live communally. I can't get the word out. They live together in harmony.
Yeah.
Right? But you don't know that unless you're talking to somebody who's boots on the ground living there and can share stories. We just hear the horror, and there's a lot of it. Don't get me wrong, but wow. So are you in Canada because of the war?
No, I wouldn't say we're in Canada because of the war, but there was a lot of different reasons why we felt God lead us to come here for a season. Initially, we thought it's just going to be for a few weeks, and then now it looks like it'll be a little bit longer before we go back. Yeah, but we have had opportunities to share in churches here. So that's been a blessing. And when we were in Israel, we were looking for ways to maybe volunteer or help or do something. And everything was just kind of a closed door at the time. And then we prayed about it. And I really didn't want to leave because especially during the war, you feel like you kind of want to be there with your people. We're united against this. And outside of Israel, people don't understand the reality. But at least there you feel like we're not alone. And then I was reading scripture, and just what jumped out to me is God is calling us to stand in the gap on behalf of his people, Israel. So that's part of why we're here in Canada. It wasn't really in our plans, but here we are. That's how God works a lot of the time.
Yeah, and I think it's scary sometimes to walk in obedience, right? Because especially I'm a planner kind of person. So not knowing my next steps, that's something that I struggle with. That's something that's really hard for me. So I can't imagine going from one country to another country and not knowing what's next. That's a big leap of faith that you guys took.
Yeah.
It's a step of obedience. Share with our listeners, why do you believe it to be so important to teach younger people, whether they be young adults or small children, raising them in our homes, or grandparents raising grandchildren? Why is it important to understand the Old Testament?
Yeah, that's such a good question. And I love your heart to sow into kids' spiritual journeys and the younger generation. And I think that our culture and society has become very individualistic. And even in general, I feel like people are maybe not having kids or having less kids by choice. And that might be fine for some people. But I feel like when we look at scripture, there's such an emphasis on the next generation and the genealogies, and that's the legacy left behind. And children were seen as such a huge blessing. And I've noticed even the contrast between Canada and Israel, when we're in Israel, there's just kids everywhere and so many young married couples with kids. And here in Canada, we're looking around, we're where are the kids? It feels emptier.
Really? Oh, interesting.
Yes.
Huh. So it feels like you're missing a piece of society, really.
Yeah, totally. Not saying there aren't any, but you definitely feel the difference. And I think that it's so important that we pass on our faith. And like we were talking about the appointed times, and I think that like so many of the appointed times, the elements in them are created to pass it down and a teaching tool for the younger generation. You know, with Sukkot, okay, let's all get together, let's build our sukkah, and the kids can decorate. And Passover, okay, you have to, let's gather the leaven in the house, help mom and dad. And it's so hands-on, which is just how kids learn, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I love that. And I think that it is vital. Otherwise, our faith just kind of dies with us versus passing it on and giving and investing into something that will live beyond us.
Yes,
right?
That's very well said. Yeah. It's l'odor, right? Passing it from generation to generation.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think you're so right. Like, that's one of the things that I love about all the Jewish holidays.
Yeah.
I always say it's an intergenerational event, and we're almost always around a table, and you have the babies and the toddlers, and, it's chaos. And then you have your aunties and uncles and your grandparents and the neighbor who doesn't have a place to go to. I mean, it's just a whole beautiful community-based living. Wow.
You're right. You're so right.
And I know my friends who live in Israel, it's just such a very different culture in the sense that you're going in and out of people's homes in a very different manner than you do. Like here in the States and probably in Canada, we have our cars and we pull into our driveway and we close the garage door and we don't see our neighbors. I mean, that's an extreme example, right? That's not 100% the case, but there is some truth to that as far as like, you talked about living very in an individualistic kind of manner. And I think, unfortunately, our society's been set up that way, as opposed to, how would you describe it in Israel as far as like, you did about like with the children, seeing children and families, but what can you add to that to help us understand what the culture of Israel is like?
Totally. Well, I feel like I describe Israel to people as one big family. Like, even if you don't know them, like they're your family just because you're in Israel. And so as your family, they feel they have the right to be in your business. And so it comes with like this beautiful side of like, people are friendly, people are open, people will be honest with you. And they're like your aunts and uncles and grandpas and grandmas everywhere. It's like everyone's so connected. So I remember my mom telling me, like, when I was a kid and she was pushing my stroller, she would have people tell her, no, your child's just too warm. You need to take off their coat. And she, can't be like this. And then she'll be like, okay. And she'll take off my coat. And then she'll go down further. And then someone will stop her and say, where's your child's coat? It's cold out here. So it very much feels like that. And I love it. Yeah.
Yeah. Everybody raises the child.
Yes. It's
it
village.
It doesn't take a village. It takes a country.
Yes.
It takes a whole country.
Totally.
Yeah. I know. My friend has told me that she said, people will say you like what you just said. She was walking down the street and she didn't have a hat on. And someone said, no, you need a hat. Come to my house. I'll give you my hat.
Right.
She got the hat. She used to tell me people would ask questions about money, about like things that we're not used to.
How much you paying for rent? What's your salary?
Yes. Right. Very different. Yeah. If I ask that question, like in a group setting, different in an intimate setting, but if I ask that in a group setting here in America or in Canada, can you imagine the response? No.
I know.
It would not be pretty.
I know. It is so culturally different. Like even here, I've noticed when a store is closing, like 10 minutes before they're closing, they'll announce it on the speakerphone, say the store is closing. And we were in like Safeway walking around getting groceries. We still had like 10 minutes and they're like looking at us with the intercom, the store is closing.
And compare that to me in Israel.
So in Israel, if the store closes at, let's say it's Shabbat's coming. So let's say it closes at 1 p.m. because Shabbat's coming. So that means no one else is allowed into the store. That's all it means. You can finish your shopping. People might still be in there for an hour before they get out because they know they can't really force people. And then still, there will always be those moms there. And then sometimes I'm there too, arguing with the guard, saying, please, I only need a chicken for Shabbat. I have to cook Shabbat dinner. And they go, okay. And they let you in. So
how funny. So different. Yeah, that's cool. Such a different culture. Well, this has been so fun, Liat. I've enjoyed the conversation. Tell us, I will put this in the show notes, but tell us, where is the best place for people to find you, follow you, learn more about you?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me on here. It's been nice to get to know you better too. And yeah, for people that want to connect more with us, they can visit our website, which is light-to-the-nations.com.
Okay.
And they can also follow us on Instagram, which is just light.to.the-nations. So they can find us on either of those platforms.
Great. Well, wonderful. Thank you. I appreciate your time today. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for being a part of the Links to Messiah podcast family. Your support means the world to us, and your feedback and engagement keep us going strong. So don't forget to hit that subscribe button and share this podcast with your friends and family. Let's continue growing this incredible community together. Until next week, keep reading the Bible to your children, keep their curiosity burning, and keep coming back for more tips to anchor your child's faith to Jesus, our Messiah. This is your host, Rachel Links Kushner, signing off with a big smile and a heart full of gratitude.